Hello everyone and welcome to my attempt at a scripting tutorial. Scripting is the coding used to run the story of a Pokemon game from start to finish. From the start of the game, from where you pick your starter, all the way to the end, where the credits roll. So therefore you can guess that this is a pretty dang broad topic to try and make a video for, but try I shall. And to that end, I really have to throw a big thank you to Nomura, Dre, ADASTRA, and many others in my Discord for helping me wrap my head around all this. My brain would have melted without them. Where I am now passing their kindness on by taking what they explained to me and doing my best to explain it to you here today. However, I want you to think of this as more of a showcase of creating a script than a traditional tutorial. One where I do my best to demonstrate the basics of creating a new script and how each piece works by showing you a script that I made for myself. Where, through learning how my script works, you can hopefully get enough of the basics to start looking at the default scripts in an unedited ROM and are able to reverse engineer how they work. Then taking that understanding and using them to create your own custom scripts. So mostly I'm trying to be your first step into teaching yourself script editing. So let me jump right into showing you what we're going to be building with this video. I'll just bring up Desmumi here, where I've opened my test ROM that has my completed script already inserted. You know, like how a cooking show always has the finished product prepared. So this is the ROM you saw me create through my mapping tutorials. At the end of my videos on warps, I commented that while I successfully made a custom world with my maps and buildings, I was missing a lot of features. Like if I open the menu here, I am missing things like the Pokedex and Pokemon selections that are usually at the top. Also, you'll notice that sounds are playing, but the music is not. I used DSPRE to set the Twin Leaf Tom music to silence to mute the map. Was that just to make things easier for editing this episode later? Yes. Okay, so what I've done is added Rowan to my map up here, where if I walk towards him, he sees me, says hello and calls out my player name, and when I hit A, I get walked up to him, where I am forced to talk to him before I can head north. So he'll continue, "Roy said you might be passing through," where he's calling out my rival name. "I know not how I got here, but welcome to J-Sam's test world. Before you explore, I would like to give you a Pokemon to accompany you. Please pick a starter from this briefcase." And then bam, briefcase shows up. Now if I'm cheeky, like, "I don't want your Pokemon, old man." "Don't you dare!" He will stop me and then walk me back down. And no matter where I try to go, I cannot walk north. So I guess I just have to take a starter. Now hit A on it, and we're going to get the default selection screen where I can pick between the usual Turtwig, Chimchar, and Prinplup. I'm going to go with the monkey. A good choice. Would you like to give it a nickname? I go, yes. Or I'm going to call him Bananas. Yes. And you are certain that this is the name you want? Actually, no, I don't want that one. I'm going to go with Nanners. Oh, wait. Nanners. Yeah. Okay. Hit okay. And you are certain this is the name you want? Yes. Ah, very good. While we are at it, there are a few more things I would like to give you as well. First, can you please document the Pokemon you see on this device? And tell me that I got the Pokedex. Secondly, let's upgrade that Pokedex while we are at it. I get the National Dex. Thirdly, here is a handy device that will help you on your travels. There we go. And I receive the Poketech. Lastly, you'll want these to get around quickly. And I get the running shoes, which I really wanted in a previous mapping episode. And with that, you are all set. I wish you the best of luck on your journey. And okay. So I can now walk south, I'm all good to go. I can now walk north, all set there. I can go to the whole next map. And That's it. That's just a little conversation I have where now I have the Pokedex. You can see my party, where I got the new name, Nanners. And we're good to go. And now it feels more like I have an actual start to my ROM hack here. And today this video should show you how I put this little scripted event into my test ROM. Because the reason I wanted to call this video more of a showcase over a tutorial is that scripts are incredibly situational. Like, you can see the way I had the player walked around was specifically based on the shape of my map. Though really, if you want to use my script on a different map in your Platinum ROM, all you'll really need to do is adjust those automatic movements to fit the other map's shape. However, the other big limitation with scripting is that each game have commands that will vary between versions a little bit. Where mine was made for Platinum, which should be mostly the same for Diamond and Pearl, but Heart Gold Soul Silver use a large number of different commands as it was built differently, plus those games have more to worry about, like follow Pokemon. So you won't be able to just copy and paste my script into Heart Gold Soul Silver. Now, I sincerely hope that what I'm saying here doesn't discourage you too much. As I keep saying each time I finally make a video on a new complicated section of NDS hacking, it's not as hard as it seems once you see it work once. So my goal as always is to make this more approachable, so that even though my script here is only used for Platinum, you'll have a basic enough grasp by the end of this to be able to look over default scripts in any Pokemon DS ROM and be able to start building your own. During my coding classes in college, one of the most helpful things I remember my professors doing was writing a working code in class in front of us. And then at the end of that class, they would give us a copy of that code and ask us to edit it to do something slightly different. Being able to start with a script I already knew how it worked really helped me to ease into learning a new coding language. So I'm doing my best to try and give you guys the same opportunity with Pokemon scripting, so that even people without prior coding experience can give it a shot. So even if you are not planning to edit Platinum for your own project, I still recommend trying this script in Platinum first to try to get your feet wet. In fact, if you wish, the files for the maps in my test ROM are still included in the zip folder that you can download from the description of this video. That way you can build a ROM of the exact same map to follow along step by step with, which you can make by watching Mapping Episode 2. Though be sure to use DSPRE instead of SDSME, which I'm using in that older version of that video. Text documents with the script I'm showing off today will also now be added to this folder here, where each command also includes a description of what it does. So like I said, you should have everything you need to perfectly recreate the script with your own hands. Okay, with all that said, let me try to answer the question of what is scripting. A lot of people will say scripting is the coding of a Pokemon ROM, like I did at the start of this video. However, when I first heard it described that way, I thought that meant I was going to have to dive into the matrix of the Pokemon game, where I was going to have to comb through pages of pure code just to master enough to make an NPC walk around. Something like this gobbledygook right here. However, when I actually tried scripting, I found out it was more like working with Legos, where commonly used actions were given a single line command instead of long lines of code. So if I wanted an NPC to walk north in Platinum one step, I just need to use the command walk up fast. This command not only handles moving the NPC, but also playing the animation to make them look like they're walking. Then if I want to make them walk faster, I just use walk up very fast. So instead of some complex coding function I thought I was going to have to know, I can just use this command and let the game fill in the rest. This makes learning scripting far easier. However, while these single line commands make things easier, this does also limit you to making your game act like the original game you are editing. If you're looking to add new commands and action to a Pokemon game that it doesn't already know, scripting is not a deep enough level of hacking to do that on its own. You'll probably need to practice NDS hacking for a good while before you can add new commands. But with that said, let me get back to the question of what is scripting. A script is a list of commands that get executed in order to perform actions like walking or teleporting NPCs around, giving the player a Pokemon or item, displaying text boxes, creating trainers to fight, placing a static legendary Pokemon and having you fight it, stuff like that. For example, here's a small script for a basic NPC. All it does is freeze you in place after hitting A on a certain NPC, where you can't walk away from them, display message number 0x0 from the related text file, we'll get into that later, keep that message up until you hit A again, where it then closes that message and then releases you so you can walk around again. This is all you need for a normal person just wandering around the town. This is something like, "I'll never look up while it's raining. I hear you can drown." So with this, I'm hoping that scripting is looking a lot less complicated than you might have imagined it be. Now the next question is, what do you do with scripting? The best way I can describe script editing is to compare it to using a bookmark as you read a book. Think of a Pokemon game like a storybook, where you use a bookmark to keep track of how far you've read up to as the player. Scripting in Pokemon games works in a similar way. As you progress through the story, the game marks down things that you've done. Then when you later try to do something else, the game will check what marks you have to see if you've progressed far enough in the story to have a certain event happen. For example, you can set a marker that waits to be set until you talk to Rowan to receive a starter Pokemon. Once you have spoken to him, that marker will then activate. You can then set an NPC to stand at the beginning of the next route that prevents the player from walking past them until they've gotten their starter. I would say this is the basics of scripting: setting out markers to track your progress, and using those markers to determine when the player has progressed far enough for the next part of your story to begin, and they can go somewhere new. There are two main ways a Pokemon game will track your progress: with flags and variables. The best way I find to visualize these two things is imagine there is an Excel spreadsheet in the ROM like this, where there are two separate lists, one for flags and one for variables. Now my example list here is about 20 rows. However, in the ROM there are thousands of each to track many things. A flag is a marker that's only ever on or off, where this value will store a 0 when it's off and a 1 if it's on. At the start of the game, all the flags are off, and then later they can be turned on and then off again by your scripts as the player progresses through your game. When a flag is on, it basically tells the game the action item related to has happened. So this would be used in the example I mentioned before, when you want the NPC to stop the player from heading to the next route until you've gotten a starter from Rowan. You have part of the script you make to have Rowan give your player a starter, also set a specific flag, as in turn it on. That way when the player later talks to the NPC, they'll see the flag is set on and will let them through. Where the other way a game tracks progress is a variable. A variable is similar to a flag, but instead of being a 0 or a 1 for on or off, it can hold a whole number. That allows a variable to be used to determine more than one thing at a time. For example, you can have one thing happen if the variable is set to 0. Then a different thing happen when the variable is set to 1, and then a totally different thing happen if it's set to 3. So if you wanted that NPC that blocks the path to the next route in my previous example to say something different based on which starter the player picked, you'd want to use a variable instead of a flag. These concepts will probably be pretty familiar to people who've done coding before, but don't worry if this doesn't make a lot of sense to you yet. You'll see me use both flags and variables in my script today, where you can see them in action. So let's get my ROM open here in DSPRE, which I have in this folder. DSPRE loaded. I just run that one, and we'll get that out of the way. Put this right here. And I hit open. And I'm going to go to my Platinum ROM that doesn't have the script yet. And open again. Extract the data from before. No, I want to start fresh. I'm going to hit no. You re-extracted. Yep, I want to start all good. And okay, so what I've opened here is a copy of my ROM I made through the mapping videos, pretty much how it was right at the end of those tutorials. Whereas the one I have open inside the ROM here is the same one, but it already has the script inserted. So this is the before, and this is the after. So in here, I'm basically picking up where I left off at the end of my warping video. What we need to do first is make sure that all of the default data from the original ROM is properly cleared off of my maps before I try to put my custom ones in there, so they don't have any conflict. So the first thing I need is to find the map header, which I can find easiest by the matrix editor. Go to the map header subtab, and then my 3 maps here, which I guess if I go to the map files, you'll remember these from before, if you've seen my mapping videos. But mostly we're only worried about this one here. But I want the header, so I'll go to the header subtab, double click, and alright, so I'm on the map that was originally Twin Leaf Town. And I'm going to jump to the files of these 4 locations to make sure that these are cleared off. First, I'm going to go for the level scripts. These are still tricky to work with at this stage, like you can see that they're not even supported in this tool yet, so I won't be going over level scripts today. But if you do want to look at them on your own time, you can check out ADASTRA's level script editor, which will be linked in the description of this video. But if you are new to scripting, I wouldn't worry about it until after you're done watching this one, because those aren't really scripts. Those are like the triggers used to automatically kick off a script when you first enter a map, which will make more sense when you see how a script works. For right now, we really have to worry about this button right here, which will clear out everything in here to make sure nothing from the original story still works. When I first tried this, I forgot this step, and when I inserted my custom scripts, I would just get a black screen when trying to load the ROM. So if you see that, make sure you cleared the level script successfully. Okay, so go back to the header, go over to the next file, and we're going to go to the events, where we see my map, but it has all the events from the original Twin Leaf map. You technically already saw me clear out these events in PPRE during mapping episode 2, but I brought them back from my test ROM here to quickly show you how it's removed in DSPRE, since it's really easy. All you gotta do is go to each of these 4 tabs and use the delete buttons to clear out each of them. Yeah. Oh, click gone, click gone, click gone. Just kind of exercise your finger for a bit. Same thing with the warps. And you'll see that preview slowly clear out. Got it. Okay, and then once these are all good, we go ahead and save the events. Perfect. Okay, then back to the header, where we'll jump to the text archive, which just holds all the text that the people say around Twin Leaf. This time I can just click the bottom and just say remove last line. Perfect. Then go ahead and save that. Very good. And you always can just double check by scrolling up and down again. Make sure they stay away. Alright, then one more time, back to the header. And then we go to the scripts, where I like to try to clear out the action subtab first. Just highlight everything and delete it. And just so it said, you do not use the remove last here, because that doesn't remove anything down here. That removes a whole script file from this list. I made that mistake once and I wanted to warn you about it. Don't use that button. You can just keep clicking, hit Control A, then delete. And then the last thing you need to do is highlight everything but the very top one, because the script subtab can't be empty. So then you need to kind of bookend that command with an end so it doesn't do anything. It just has something in there. And once you're like that, you can save it. No errors. Good. Okay, we'll do the same thing. Scroll up and down again. Still like that. Good, good, good. And just to make sure I didn't do it on the events. Oh, it didn't load the map that time. That's interesting. Well, this actually presents me an opportunity, though, because this sometimes does it to me, too, where it doesn't load the maps. You're like, oh, crap, well, what do I do now? So if you don't see your map in the preview, you just go to the matrix editor, and my map is right here. So that's 3 by 27. So I come back to here, and in these, I just put in 3 and 27. Click out of that, and then it'll load my map. So basically, it's moving this, which is the same grid as the matrix. Then you can use these arrows to move around. It's really neat. But okay, I can see that my tabs are still empty. Good, good. So everything's saved and happy. And we are good to go. And okay, with all those steps, I can now be sure that the Twin Leaf map has been fully cleaned, and is now ready for me to start adding my own scripts. Now, just to be clear, cleaning out everything like I just did is only needed if you are looking to make your own fully custom location, which I assume most of you want to. However, if you just want to slightly edit an existing location, you don't have to clear out everything like I just did. This is mostly for people looking to try to create their own region. But it's easier to start with making a brand new one, because once you see how everything works, then it's easier to kind of go in and scalpel cut out sections of the original story, and then insert what you want to do, which will be more clear by the end of this video. Alright, and now I believe we can start making my intro. So the first thing I need to do is add Rowan onto my map's eventing. So we'll go down here to the events again, and I got the same black screen, so 327. You won't stop me. And then we'll go to the Overworld sub-tab. I just click Add. We'll get somebody right around the middle of the map. But to make this into Rowan, I need to scroll this pick list until I find Rowan, which I know by prior experience that should be number 99. Ha! There he is. Well, I'll put right here, oh, there, at 15x by 8y. So now that I have Rowan here, there's a bunch of options here on the right. First, I just want to make sure that this overworld property is set to none, so there's the basic NPC you just talked to, which it should be by default. I also want him to be standing still, so I'm going to leave the movement on 0, 0 for none. There's a lot of selections that you have to pick from. Though I'm not sure what the difference is between 0, 0 and 0, 1. Lastly, I want Rowan to be facing away from the player before the conversation begins. So I will also set the first orientation to up, which also updates the preview. Okay, right now Rowan's been set as a basic NPC that will start a script when your player walks up to them and hits A. However, I want my script to be unskippable. If I leave the start of my script like this, where it's up to the player to start it, the player could just walk right past Rowan and screw themselves over by not getting a starter. So what I want to do next is set up a trigger to catch the player and force them to talk to Rowan. So let's jump to the Triggers tab. Then I'll click the Add button here. That will create a small trigger here in the upper left. I want to be right where this path starts. So I'll click here to place it. Now if I want this to totally block the player's path, I can set the width to 4. Now a trigger needs a specific variable listed on it to check if it should be active or inactive. And I'm going to set variable number 16,620 in here and leave my expected value as 0. This probably seems like a pretty erroneous number, but there is a reason for that. As I stated at the start of this video, there are thousands of flags and variables in the ROM. However, many of them are already used by the scripts in a vanilla ROM. This is not a problem if you do not plan to use any of the original story in your ROM hack, but it can get pretty darn tedious if you are trying to insert a script into the original story, as you do not want to accidentally change the value of a flag or variable that is used by a later script. So as part of my research for this video, Dre was kind enough to give me a list of unused flags and variables they found while making Renegade Platinum, which I put into this file here. Now as you can probably guess, these can only be used with Platinum. Diamond and Pearl may be similar, but Heart, Gold, Soul, Silver will be totally different. If I learn of similar lists for other ROMs, I'll try to add more files to this folder, and you'll find them here when you download the zip folder from the description. But anyway, long story short, I used 16,620 on this trigger because it's one of the unused variables. Having the player step onto this trigger is meant to be the start of my script. So let me show you what I mean. If I can bring my ROM back up, I'll just reset it quick. Let's speed this up a little bit. Thank you. And okay. Let me just grab a save state here. And okay, so get this over here. Get this over here. So walking onto this trigger, which is right here in front of me, is what makes Rowan notice me. That'd be the same if I load my state. I do the same thing over here. Aha! Rowan sees all. And what should happen next is that if I hit A, no matter where I'm standing, the player will get rocked up to Rowan. So if I go back, same thing here as well. Where I am now trapped, and our conversation will continue from here. Now, obviously, we haven't added the parts where we have Rowan do all this fancy stuff yet. Just a trigger that starts it. So let's go back over to DSPRE here. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this one LCD. We'll just get rid of that overlap. There we go. Just like that. Oh, just squish that right there. So right now we have Rowan's overworld sprite and the trigger, but they're really just empty shells. So next we need to add the commands that actually have these things do things. So we're going to save our event, so we don't lose our progress for anything. Just do a quick scroll. Okay, they're still there. Well, I'll head back to the header, and then come back to the script file. And the time has come to insert my commands. Now, as I mentioned before, I've included some files to make things easier for you. And get these out of the way. First, I had the Excel spreadsheet I showed before, where I have all my commands listed and also have a brief description of what each one does. I'll be going over the steps here in the video. These written blurbs are just for quick reminders after you've watched this video. I thought that might be nice to have instead of having to skim this video for the moment I talk about a particular command. And also for extra security, in case someone doesn't have access to Excel, I also have these two basic text files that also have a list of my commands. So we'll go this one, and then the commands. I split up the commands and descriptions like this to make it easier to copy commands as you don't have to worry about the commands being next to them. I hope this is helpful. Okay. Oh, and also, go into this folder. So DSPRE is able to export raw files from a ROM. So I've exported a raw file of the script, events, and text from my edited ROM, and then put them into this folder. That way you can easily use the buttons to import them into DSPRE on your end. Like this one right here. Now there is also another big reason why I did this, and it's mostly for the script file. This tool actually translates command names. Like if I jump back up, yeah, script 0, I can see these commands from a default script. And if I hover my mouse over one of these commands, I can see the hex ID of this command, where DSPRE tries to give each of these commands a friendly name to make your scripts more readable when viewed in the editor. If DSPRE didn't do this, then your scripts would look like script 3 here. Well, there's a bunch of unnamed commands that we don't know what they do yet. So compared to this, you can see that this is much more readable when trying to create your scripts. But then what happens is that when you click the save button, the actual script file is updated with the IDs and not these names. These are really just for us to see them inside the editor. So we're looking at the script files with more friendly DSPRE lenses, which is just so nice of this tool to do, because I can only imagine how much harder this would have been for me to learn without these command names. If you want, you can see all these friendly names that this tool has in the script commands database, where you can see the command ID and the name this tool gives it. Actually, these friendly names are based off a famous Google sheet called the SCRCMD that is hosted by Mike Land and ADASTRA, which I've included a link to in the folder here, which basically tracks the NDS hacking community's current understanding of Game Freak script commands, organized into these tabs along the bottom, where each line also has more detail in the function and notes columns. So this document can be super useful when you're trying to find a command that does a specific thing you're looking for. So back to my exported script file. Since these friendly command names are decided by the hacking community, they are subject to change over time. But as I said, when you save the file in DSPRE, it's actually the command IDs that get inserted and not the names. And these IDs will never change. So if you get a newer version of DSPRE that has updated command names down the road, you can import my script file here and then see if any of the commands I use in my video have had their names changed, as that newer version of DSPRE will display my script file in the new format. This is a way to future-proof my video, so it can stay helpful to people for as long as possible. Though no matter what, my folder here will come with DSPRE Reloaded 1.3.1, which is the exact version I'm using in this video. So I recommend using this version of DSPRE first when first learning scripting, where you can later jump to the newest version of DSPRE once you've gotten your feet wet. But okay, let's get my script here into DSPRE. So while I could import my script file like I just said, I'm actually going to copy and paste my commands because that will help me explain a bit more of how the script editor behaves. So let me first copy all my scripts. Where I'll come back to the header and just jump back to the script file. There we go, 1052. I can just delete, replace. Okay, so there's all those. And I can grab all my functions. Alright, and then I can grab all of my actions. Alright, and when I save, I shouldn't get any errors. Cool. Click OK, and I'm going to scroll up, come back down, and you'll see that it's been reformatted a little bit. So it looks like the original script did before I removed it. This is related to how I just mentioned that DSPRE needs to convert the friendly names that are written here in the editor into the IDs which are actually saved into the script file. To help make sure this tool performs this conversion correctly, DSPRE has a certain format that it wants the commands to be typed into, and it will do what it can to auto-format the text given to fit that format. However, also because of this formatting, there are some things that will prevent DSPRE from saving. For example, if I remove function 13 down here, and then try to save, I get this error message. Though it's nice that it tells me exactly what is wrong. The function 13 has not been declared. What that means is that one of my functions here, this one, calls for function 13, but the tool says, hey, you don't have one. So I at least need to make sure I have like a placeholder. Like if I type function 13 and then end. So it doesn't do anything, but there's something at least there to be found. I can save it, and then it likes it. There we go. Okay, should be able to save still. Yep, good, good, good. And I'm back where I was. There's one last warning related to DSPRE formatting that I want to mention before we move on. When first learning how to script, I actually first wrote it up in my Excel spreadsheet over here and didn't put it into DSPRE until I was ready to test it. However, when I did, I noticed that some of my functions and actions were swapped around. Like originally, action 2 was placed after action 6. What happened was that when DSPRE scanned my script, it saw that action 1 was called here, what was action 6 was called here, but since that's the second one on this tab, it became action 2. My actual action 6 got moved up here. Then the first action at the top of the functions was 3, 4, 5, and so on. Though what is nice is that once my action 6 became action 2, it did auto-update this line here, so I didn't have to dig for it and find it and rewrite my script to match the new numbers. It did it for me. I just want to make sure that you knew that in case you made your script like I did first, and then you're wondering why later why your script's getting swapped around. Alright, now that we have all of that out of the way, let's actually get into how I made my script. I had to think long and hard on how I was going to present everything so I can show everything off step by step. The idea I came up with was to have my ROM with the script already inserted, open here in the left, where I'll call out which commands are running over here on the right. Though to be thorough, what I want to do is start my ROM over from scratch. So I'm gonna reset. And limit the frame rate again. Okay, and it's up select B. Aha! So then delete. And yes. Get rid of my save file. And while that's running, get this open over here. I can mute that. Okay, so I can run through the intro here. No information needed. Believe me, I have been here before. Oh, right. And now what it needs me to do is bring back this other screen. Oh. Boy or girl? Be the boy. Your name? J-A-Y. Okay. Name is Jay. Yes, my name that is. Now this boy here, I believe he is your friend. What would his name be? So I actually got some flack for naming him Roy, so I'm gonna go something a little different this time. R-O-Y. Perfect. Roy, is it that your friend's name? Yes. Alright, that time has come. Okay, now before we get into this, let me limit the frame rate and unmute this. Alright, so when I progress past this part, yes, thank you, Rowan. Very good. So there's this music that starts when the splash screen comes up. I guess this is supposed to be the music coming out of your TV in the player's room, but only just this morning when I was getting ready to record today, did I realize that with how I did this, when you hit A and you progress into the story, that music keeps playing while I am here. Where in my earlier demonstration at the start of this video, my map is silent. So I usually do my work while playing music or videos in the background from YouTube, so I often have the game muted. And I never realized that this music was still going after I had set the map to be silent in DSPRE. Right here. So apparently this is supposed to be stopped by a command. However, the workaround for this will make more sense after we go through my script, so I'm not going to table this issue for now and talk about it much later at this timestamp. For now, I'm just going to save my game. I'm going to go back to muting it and make it go faster. Okay. Then I can reset it. I didn't need to close that. Okay, come back. And now when I limit the frame rate, unmute it, there should be no music. Okay, so that ended the command from before to keep playing that music. So now we're good. And we have blissful silence for as we move on. Now I can close you. And just for now, I'm going to get rid of that overlap. Alright, so as I said before, I want my script to start the moment the player walks into this trigger right in front of me here. So real quick, I'm going to jump back into the event editor over here. Look at my trigger, where we'll look at the script to trigger, which I want to set to 1. So this means that when the player steps on this trigger, we're going to activate the first command of script 1, which is lock all, which is the command that takes control away from the player so they can no longer use the D-pad to walk around. So when I step here, I'm locked in place and we'll jump to the next command, which is movement overworld ID 1, action 1. So this means that overworld number 1, which if I look back at the event editor, is Rowan, because the ID number here is 1. Now, I just want to be clear, though. It says 1 here, and it says 0 here. But it's the ID that you want for this command here. Okay, and then when it activates action 1, it'll come here, and it kicks off look down, which is when they face me over here. Then exclamation, which is what had that exclamation point show up over their head. Then we hit this end on action 1, and we jump back to where it started, and we go to the next command, which is wait movement, which is just a command that says the game should wait before running the next command until the overworld sprite is done. I've seen what happens when you don't remember to put wait commands. and it's not pretty. Don't do it. But okay, once that's done, then it runs this command, text player name 0x0. Nothing visually happens in the game when this runs. This is just storing my player name I entered in the intro to be used later. Then it will run message 0x0, where this text box shows up, and this is where the text archive comes into play. Now it's still cleared out from before, and I technically have all my text in the document over here, but I would have to paste them in one by one into here. So I'm just gonna import and appreciate my own handiwork, where I have my exported text archive. Okay, and there's all my text from my document here. And okay, you'll see here on the left that this line is 0x0, and that is this text here. So now you may be wondering, back here in the commands, we had text player name 0x0, and we had message name 0x0. These are not the same thing. When a message has a number, it's only referring to these numbers here along the side, to whatever text archive is listed on the same header over here. This 0x0 is actually referring to the macro we have in this text one right here. This is the portion that has it pull in my player name right here. And the 0x0 is this value right here. Well, you can just say this value here. So this 0 means this 0. Because what it's doing is it's storing my player name into variable 1. And then what this macro is doing is calling whatever text is stored in variable 0. And then what the macro is doing is calling any text that is stored at variable 0. And that's when it puts it here. And okay, so with these commands, we are now caught up to what's being shown over here. Right now we're at wait button, where it is waiting for me to push a button to move on to the next command, where it's going to close the message and then run this section of the command that's used to walk me up to Rowan. So I come here, A, and I get walked up to Rowan here. Now, as I showed you before, if I load back here, no matter where I come from, I'll be walked up to Rowan. So the path the player will take will depend on which tile they stand on this trigger. So you have 4 tiles here, and we have 4 repeating commands here. So the first thing that happened is that when the message closed, a command ran to see where the player was standing, as in which tile were they standing on, where it stores my current X value in this variable and my Y value in this variable. Then these compare variable value commands will look at the coordinates stored by this command and compare it to this hex value. And then if these two are equal, then we'll run this jump if to go to function 1. And if you look at function 1, all it does is run action 3, which has the steps it would take from that tile up to Rowan. But this portion points to this tile right here. So when we do action 3, it'll make the player walk up once, right once, and then up 1 again. So 1, 2, 3. Get you right there. And it does the player because it says player here instead of an overworld ID like we did over here for that movement. And okay, that's why we have 4 commands. This command points to this tile, this command, this tile, and then these 2 commands to this tile. And that way we'll know which set of steps to take to walk up to Rowan. Now, to be more specific, this command, like I said, stores the player's X and Y in 8004 and 8005. A compare variable can only do one variable at once. So when we list 8004 here, we are only comparing the player's X value to this hex value here. But that is okay, because since my trigger's in a straight line, so they're all going to have the same Y coordinate, as they're all the same distance away from the X axis up here. They're going to have a different X coordinate, because they're all a different distance away from the X axis over here. And to help show that, I can add a temporary second overworld here, and click to place them on the first tile right there, which is 14X and 11Y. And if I jump here, it's now 15X and 11Y, and then 16, and then 17. However, as with a lot of things in the ROM, this command is storing the matrix coordinates, not the local map coordinates. So these commands are not checking where you're standing on the map, but on the whole world, since this map is on the matrix 0. Basically, the ROM considers the whole matrix loaded at once, so the coordinates it wants to know are at the matrix level, not the local map level. So this adds a little bit of math to what we need to do, but not too much. So we're working on this map here, and you can see that the coordinates it's at in the matrix is 3 by 27, which actually the event editor always tells us right down here. So it's even easier to get it right from this spot. So this 3 is referring to this position here. And because this starts at 0, there is 1, 2, 3 whole maps between my map and the x-axis end of the matrix. And I mentioned this a bit in my mapping videos, but just to say it here, since we're working with a map, and a map is always 32 by 32 tiles, we just have to add all of the tiles of all of those maps that exist between my tile and here. So all you need to know from that is, because maps are 32 tiles by 32 tiles, that whatever value you see here needs to be multiplied by 32. So if I bring up my calculator here, alright, so 3 times 32 is 96. So we have 3 times 32 equals 96. So that's telling me that there are 3 maps here, and since they're all 32 tiles, and 96 tiles between here and here. And then to get my coordinate, when my player is standing here, I just add on the local map coordinate. So plus 14 equals 110. Let me just double check that. I swear I know math. I just, when you're recording a video, I want to make sure that your brain's working right. Okay, so that means that the matrix coordinate of this spot is 110. And since the commands work in hex, I need to know the hex value of 110. Let's see. 110 in hex. Ah, 0x6e, which finally, now you know what this means. So, all of that was to explain that all this is asking is, does the player's current X matrix coordinate equal 110 in hex? Basically asking, is the player standing here? And then that is repeated for these lower ones here. So if we do 111 in hex, that's 6F. And then next is 70, 71, and so on. These are just asking which tile is the player standing on. And because this only triggers when the player steps onto one of these have to be true, so there's no else. If you're used to, like, you know, if-else statements and other coding, doesn't happen here. It's either is or it never happened. And then whichever one these trigger will jump to their function here of these 4, and then whichever of those happen will apply their action to the player of these 4 here. And that is how I get walked up to Rowan. And I swear we are now past one of the more complicated parts of this to explain. And actually, as a quick aside, halfway through writing this script, I realized I could skip this whole compare value thing of where the player stands if I just list 4 separate triggers here, instead of using one long one, and then just set each of their scripts to trigger to a different single script that just is in here and specifically tells it, like this here, what action to do. But I started this way with the compare values because this is how they did it in the original script. So maybe there's a reason why they didn't do it that way, but I don't know. We'll have to play with it and see. Also, I figured it'd be good for you guys to see how this command works, because it's pretty useful. Okay, but just to clean up, let me get rid of that extra overworld spread that I don't need. That was just to get those coordinates. Okay, so now that the player is standing in front of Rowan, we can now move on to the next phase of my script, where he talks to you. As you can see with this message here, get rid of this, and you can see, let me just roll back again. And this will come over from way over here. Because I like showing this off, it was a lot of work. So this message pops up because it's part of the same list of commands that's on the trigger, number 1. So then I get walked up here with this, and then this text box also comes up automatically. And so if you look at one of these functions, these 4 end by going to function number 9. So the ball's still rolling after this movement happens and I'm walked up to Rowan. So if I come down to 9, we are now here. And this command is just like the one that we had that got the player name, which was the rival's name in variable number 1. So when it displays message 1, which is this one, which we can see right here, which is going to be much longer, it starts it off here. With this similar macro that just has a 1 here instead of a 0. So again, even though this says 1 and this says 1, they are in no way related. This one just points to this 1 in the macro. And then this one points to the 1 on the message line. So we're going to be in this longer message for a bit. So it's going to display the first part, which we can see there on in the game. So first I hit the /n, or that's what told the message to put through on the next line. And then we hit the /r, which is making this message wait until I hit A to move on to the next part. We get to this /n, and then it goes to the next line, and then keeps on going till we hit this /r, and I hit A. Yeah, we just keep going with that same pattern, here to here, and then here to here, because there wasn't much left to say there. Where we get to here, and reach the end, which jumps us back to the script, and we hit this wait button, which is here. You can see it's different because there's no arrow here. Where I hit A, and the briefcase shows up. Okay, which basically we hit the button on that last message, close the text message, and then this happened. So set overworld full position, and then all of these values, which I will get into here in a sec. Because we don't actually have a briefcase in my eventing yet, so I'll add that now. So I'm going to add one. And the same thing as before. Since it's here, I'm going to start putting it where I want it, which is right there. And I got to scroll through and find it, which through my experience, I know that that is 174. Haha! Movement doesn't matter, leave that at 0. And there's the orientation, because all the frames of this briefcase are the same. It doesn't turn. But for this overworld sprite, what I'm going to do is give it a flag to listen to. I'm going to give it 2210. Which, again, much like the variable I told this trigger to listen to, seems a little random, but this is just one of those unused flags I mentioned before. Okay, so as I mentioned, this command is set to make this briefcase teleport, which I'm just going to quick write down this information while we have it. Let's do a note down there. That's just 16x, 8y, like so, and ID number 2. Because this is where I want this briefcase to end up, but I have to hide it first. Basically, when I first arrive to the map, it's hiding in the bushes, waiting for that command to run and have it appear next to Rowan, just like that. Technically, for my map, I could just put it right there at 0, 0 on the map. Because if I load my state again, there you are. I can only reach up to here, so the briefcase, which is here, would never show up. But that only really works for my map. I don't know what shape your map's gonna have. So I wanted to show you guys how to send it far away, so there's no possible way that it can ever be seen. And that can be done by changing the global coordinates down here. So usually, the overall spread everything is on the same map you're working on. So these coordinates will match these coordinates. But if I want this to not show up, I can just change either of these two, and it's gone. So I set this to 2, so now it's showing up on 0, 0 of this map. So there's no possible way to see that over here. Anywhere from here. That's a whole map away, out of my sight. We even go even further. Apparently what Nomura does all the time is they just set these to 0 here and here. So that all of these are zeros, and that sends it here, up in the Shadow Realm on the Matrix, where it is miles away from your map. It does not matter where you send it, as long as it's not anywhere on this current map here. And okay, so I've hidden the briefcase in the bushes. And when this command runs, it has these hex values to know exactly where to place it. So we start with this value, which is the hex value of 2. That one, super easy. That is the ID number right here for the briefcase. Then we have 70, and that is just the X value of the matrix coordinates for where I want to put it. Which was, again, right here. So since the matrix coordinates, I then have to take my X, so it's 16 plus 96, which, again, calculated for safety, is 112. So then we need the Y, so we have this one already, but we need also is 27. Because there are 27 maps this way when it's loaded the whole matrix. So that's 27 times 32, which is 864. And that's plus the 8 we have here. Which, again, calculated for safety. Plus 8. Ha! 872. So we're dealing with this number and this number. So back on the script editor, we've got our first parameter, which was 2 for the ID. This one is the hex value of the X, which is just 112, 0x70, which is why it's the same number you saw right here. Because these two line up with each other. This is the Z coordinate first, which seems out of order to me, but in general, I am told this is always 0. So we can leave that alone. And then we have the global Y coordinate, which is the hex value of 872. 872. Which is 368. Which is that right there. Okay, and then this last one is actually the direction you want the overworld to face. And this is 0. And to my understanding, this correlates to this pick list here. Where 0 is up, 1 is down, 2 is left, and 3 is right, I believe. So we actually don't care. So I left mine at 0, because with the frames of the briefcase, they're all the same direction. It doesn't actually turn. Like if I bring it back, if I scroll this, I can turn Rowan. He turns. But for the briefcase, it does not matter. There are no different frames in that overworld sprite. Okay, so back to the Shadow Realm with you. Zero these out. 0 these out. We are good. Also, when I'm here, I should save. You never know what'll happen. Okay, so that's it. That's what these are. This literally just tells the briefcase that when I walk up to Rowan, boom. Okay, hello there. He says yes. Where's he might be passing through? Yep. So right when I hit the wait button here, kicks off this, boom. There's the briefcase. Basically teleported to that spot to make it appear like he's putting it down next to him. Alright, so after that we get to this set variable command, and this is when the variable that I set on my trigger before comes into play. So this value here, it's the hex value of this flag here. So if I just look up 16,620 in hex, we get this value here, which matches this value right here. And then we have the value of 1. So we're telling this variable, which I mentioned before stores a number, that it is now set to number 1. Okay, and I can demonstrate what that's done. So we have this here, right? And then so nothing visually happens. That's just the background thing that variable is given the value of 1. And then it runs release all, and we actually hit end. There's no jumps, there's no nothing. We hit this end, and now normal gameplay resumes, where I now control and can walk around again. And you'll notice I can now walk over the southern trigger. And that is because I have set this variable to 1. And if you look at the trigger, the expected value it looks at is 0. So when we first started the game, I mentioned that all flags are off and all variables are started at 0. So at the start of the game, we were going forward until we get to this command. This variable was set to 0, so this matched, so this trigger was active. But now that I've set it to 1, basically 1 no longer matches 0, so until that turns back into 0, this will never be active again. So like I said, way back in the beginning, this is like setting a bookmark in your Pokemon story. I have now progressed my story far enough, my script, that the briefcase has appeared, and I no longer need the southern trigger, so my game now knows that should just be gone. So we've now been freed by the entire script that was started just by stepping onto this one spot. That was one continuous motion there to here. Now, this is also an overworld sprite, so I hit A on this, I will open up the briefcase and pick my starter. Just like you do in the normal ROM. But since I have control, I mean, obviously, I would want to have a starter. But I could really mess things up if I was just to walk north from here. So what I have now is this part. Don't you dare! Where Rowan will stop me, and no matter where I try to go, I can't escape. And as you can imagine, this is a second trigger that I need to set up. So I'm gonna get this out of the way for now. Yeah, you too. I'm gonna clean up this workspace. Alright, so I'm gonna add a second trigger. I'm gonna set it right here. And then do the same thing where I stretch it across the path. You can't go through. And now I want this to activate this portion. So I need to set the script to trigger 2b2. But for this trigger, I'm going to put the same variable on it, 16,620. And this I'm going to set the expected value to 1. So what that means is that now we've gotten to this command that changes it to 1, and I can walk around again. These are not equal, and this trigger is now active. We'll get into what that's actually doing to send me back down. So that technically means that at the start of the game, when I come up here, I walk up to this. This upper trigger is inactive. So if there was some way I could get past this one, I could just keep walking and it wouldn't stop me. But since I can't get past this one, it doesn't matter that this isn't active until after Rowan lets me go to walk up to the briefcase. So this all smoothly works by using the same variable. Now technically, I could just use a different variable, 1621. But as I explained before, there's not many variables that the ROM doesn't always use. So it's good to try to reuse as many as you can if you're planning to make a whole separate ROM hack. But okay, how does this trigger work? So basically, you step on it, you go to script number 2, which is this portion right here. It's the same thing, it'll do a lock all. That will hold me still. And then it displays message 02. Which if we come to the text editor, oh, let's scroll back this way. We got this one right here. And so this macro is a little different. You're supposed to put the text you want between this C and this slash. And putting it there in the middle is what makes it this big. This was shared with me, and I really wanted to share it on with you guys because that's just a fun text to have. But yeah, that's it. It's not very long. So there's no slash n's or slash r's to worry about. So we go directly back here. We do the wait button where I hit A, and the message closes. And the actual part that sets me down is it just says, hey, apply movement to player action number 2. And action 2 is just here. Walk down fast 1. So there's no crazy compare variables for this one because I don't care where I am. I'm not trying to go anywhere specific. I just need to be stepped back down once so that I can't cross this trigger. That's it. It's way simpler than the first one. But okay, I am now prepared to hit A on the briefcase. And now I realize that in my event on the overworld, I never set what script should this overworld trigger when I hit A on it. So this would be, yes, okay, this would be this one. So we just gotta set this one to 3. Just like so. So when I come here in the game and I hit A, it will now load the starter select screen. Okay, so to be honest with you, this part right here is pretty much a copy and paste from the original vanilla Platinum scripts. So there's some things I don't know how they work. Like, I'm not sure what these parameters here mean, but these just control how quickly the screen fades before we come to the starter select screen. So basically I hit A in the briefcase, I get locked so I can't move again. The screen fades for it, and then what happens is that it waits for the screen to fade before anything else happens, so that means that these commands won't run until after we've successfully hit full dark screen. Now we're gonna come back to these two, because that'll make sense more a little later. But after these happen, we get to this one, which just is the portion that opens up this screen. And then what happens is this has its own internal coding. I don't have to control anything here. So everything's all default. I can go ahead and pick my starter, where I'm gonna pick the monkey. Okay, then after that closes, so we get here, which I believe the exact timing of this one is when I hit, are you sure this is the one that you want? I say yes. And that's when we return back to the game. The screen fades back from black to colorful again, where we wait for the fade. And then we have this part. So I believe that the choose starter screen holds on to which Pokemon I picked, like the hex ID of that Pokemon. This one asks what did they pick from here, and then it will take and it stores whatever that is into variable 8000 or hex value 8000, and then takes whatever that is, puts it into this command that actually gives it to me at level 5 into my first slot, which is 0, and I don't know what that one is. I don't know what that portion does, but it works. Okay, and then we get back to this, which you saw here. I was walked back from the briefcase back up to Rowan. But before we get into this one, I'm gonna roll us back a little bit. Okay, so we rolled back, and now we're going to pick the monkey. Okay, I'm going to hit yes, fade, pause. Okay, so there's two things you're going to notice that's happening right now. One is that the briefcase is gone. And that's when we go back to these two commands here. So the first thing we're doing is we're setting flag with the hex value of 8A2. So basically, this is the hex value of the number 2210. So this flag that's on this one is now set to be on, because this will say set. And what happens is that if you set any flag on an overworld other than 0, like with Rowan, I always want Rowan to show up. So they're going to be there, that's totally fine. But this one, if the specific flag that I set here is set and set to be on, turned on, then that actually will tell the ROM not to load that overworld sprite anymore. So if I was to leave this map and come back, this flag would still be set and the briefcase wouldn't show up again. However, and so, okay, this is the part that confused me a little bit. So this means that when you leave the map and you come back, that you won't see the briefcase again. It will not show up. However, this does not remove it right now. This is only used for later if you come back to this map. The part that removes it right now is this one. Remove overworld, then overworld ID number 2, which again is this ID number right there. So the second command is necessary to make it disappear right here that you see in the game. And this is necessary just to make sure that if I leave the map and head north and then come back later on, it won't come back. So I want to be very clear to try to explain that part, because I was really trying to wrap my head around that one when I was first learning. Okay, so now we can jump forward again to where we are, which is this. We're running the same thing again, where we're checking where the player is, and then comparing it to these values to see where they are. And then yet again, jumping the functions 5, 6, or 7, which are here, here, and here, where we apply the movement 7, 8, or 9, depending on where I'm standing. which had the steps to walk me back. And where these are walking me from. So it's asking, where am I standing after I interact with the briefcase? So if I roll things back, okay, so now I have reround time again, so right after the briefcase shows up. So I can hit A on the briefcase from here, or from here. And that is what these commands are asking. Which one of these tiles am I standing on, so that it knows which these functions to run, and therefore which of these actions to do, to give me the exact number of steps to get me back to stand in front of Rowan. Which, again, I could have used 3 different triggers, so I didn't need to use any kind of compare variable to get walked back to Rowan right there. But what I wanted to show was that, so 2 of these, well, it might be easier if I bring that briefcase back here. There we go. And then I'll add another one just to make this easy to explain. So I can stand here, I can stand here, I can stand here. But 2 of these have the same x-coordinate. They are the same distance away from the x-axis of the map. So that means I can't use the same value that I use for this one. However, they each have a different y-coordinate. Each of these are a different distance away from the y-axis up here. So what I've done here is that, again, the x value is stored in variable with the hex value 8004, and then I'm using 8005 here instead of 4, whereas the original one I used 4. So in these, I'm comparing the x coordinate to these values, and as one, I'm comparing the y value to these coordinates. And you've probably seen enough math by now. So basically, these values are the matrix y coordinate of these spots. So 27 times 32 plus 7. 27 times 32 plus 8. And 27 times 32 plus 9. So then, oh. I'm only realizing now that these are in the reverse order. So I did them, okay. So this is plus 9. So this one is this coordinate, because I was going counterclockwise to the to the briefcase. So here is this spot. Here is this spot. And here is that spot. Okay. That's how I was working with it. It's just the same way as I did the same comparison up here. Okay, so no matter which one of these go to, function 5, 6, or 7, these all end with going to function 10. So that means that after we get walked up to Rowan like we are here, we're moving on. The script doesn't stop yet. And we're going to here. So let me get the game caught up again. I need to go here. Okay, yeah. Thank you. And I'll pick the monkey. I walked up. Okay. So with no pause, they're hitting 10 here. We immediately display message 3, which we're looking at right here. So we go to a good choice. /R for the arrow. Would you like to give it a nickname, which we're just separating with a /n? Okay, so we hit the end of this, and we're jumping back. So we do the next command, which is the yes/no box, which just brings up this. And what we can do is give it any variable, and you'll see this one, the variable with the hex value of 8000 in C. This one gets used a lot. This, you can see it's here, it's here. Like any one of the variables could be used the same way. But it just seems like Game Freak like to use this one over and over anytime they just needed a one-time use variable for just a little while. If you're wondering why we're seeing this one used so much. So, okay. So this one comes up, and it's going to listen to if you hit yes or no here. If we hit yes, it will put a 0 in this variable. And if we hit no, it'll put a 1 in this variable right there. So this next compare value, a lot like how we use it for walking up to Rowan, it's just asking, does the value of this, which came from the yes or no box, equal 0, which is yes. So if we hit yes and they're equal, we'll jump to function 11. And if they are different, as in they hit no, we'll go to function 12. Okay, so let's say here in my example that I hit yes. So we keep chugging along, and we immediately jump to this here, where this is basically, again, a carbon copy of the default scripts that I found about giving your starter a nickname. So it starts off with setting variable with hex value of 8000 in C to 0, which if we hit yes is already set to 0. So I don't know what the point of that is or if it's necessary. So I put it in there for consistency, but you may find that you don't need this. It's just there. So then what happens is that it will close the message from earlier, which was this message here, number 3. And it fades the screen just like it did for the starter selection, which brings up the name of selection. Oh, which is on the second screen. Okay, we're good. And like before, I'm gonna go with bananas. There we go, bananas. Name of the monkey. Hit OK. And so after I hit OK, this one, I know that it puts whatever name I type in here to variable 8002. It's also doing something for hex value 8000 in C. I think something that I don't particularly need, but we'll have to keep an eye on what that does. But okay, next we'll fade it back as we saw over here, and wait for the fade screen. And now it's gonna bring up message 04, where we're back over here. And are you certain this is the name with the word wrap that you want? Where we hit the end of the message, come back here, and we got another yes no box that we're also using the same variable, hex value 8000 in C, without breaking anything. So like I said, I don't know what this does, and we're storing our yes or no in there and comparing it. And now this time though, I am comparing what we put in this yes or no box to 1, which is no. And what happens is that if we say no, and this equals no, then we will jump to function 11, which this is function 11. So this just starts us over again. So that all that does is if I say no, it reopens the name selection again, so I can repick one. And then I will do my very, very funny Nanners. Yeah, you go. Much cooler name for the fire monkey. Are you certain this is the name that you want? So we're looping, and we're coming right back here again. Well, this time if I say yes, we're gonna get jumped to function 13. Down below this one. Okay. And what this is, so this is actually an unnamed command right now. So this is something you may see change later on, is that we actually give this command a name once we know exactly what it does. But to my understanding and how I've tested with the script, is that this is what commits the name that is stored from this command. This is what actually commits it. So I can loop back through this as many times as I want. Keep hitting no when these are equal. Going, 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 going. My Pokemon's name will not change until I hit yes, jump to 13, and we do this. As far as I can tell. Like I said, this is an unnamed command. Okay, that's all it does. So then we jump to function 12, start this whole long one here, which will take us to the end of my script. Now, before we get into that one, though, I do want to mention that if we had said no back here in function 10, when we were asked with message 3, did we want to give our Pokemon a nickname? We would say no. We would get jumped immediately to 12. We would just skip that whole naming rigmarole, and we would come to here. But anyway, let me get this caught up, because this is still back when it's asking me here, yes or no. So I'm going to say yes, does the rest, and we then get jumped from 13 up to 12, and we display message 5. So we go to the /R. Very good. While you're at it, there are a few things I would like to give you as well. First, can you please document the Pokemon you see on this device? Okay, then we hit the end. Alright, so we come back here, hit the wait button, and then when I hit A, it's going to close the original message. It's going to give me the Pokedex. But this doesn't do anything. That just happens in the background. And that sound we just heard starts here. But you can see that it's now displaying message 6 down here. And then to display my name, since we hit end earlier, because it got it originally in script 1, but we eventually got to the end of script 9. So we got to this end by going from like function 1 to function 9. This dropped my name from that variable. Actually, an important thing to mention is that we're actually not certain why my name gets cleared out of that variable. Many variables seem to keep their values forever, while others seem to drop their value once the script is done. Currently, there's not really a way to tell which ones will keep their variables and which ones will drop them without just trial and error. So the main thing to take away from here is that if you see your value get dropped from a variable, you'll just want to try a different one. So what I need to do from there is when we're here at number 12, and we're displaying message 6, we need to grab my player name again and put it back into variable 0. So that way when we replace 6, then we'll display my name with the macro here, same one as before. And then this time I added another macro, which is this part here to here, where we put Pokedex in the middle, right there. That's what makes the text red. And then you'll see that the exclamation point is not red because it's after the end of the macro right there. I just want to make sure I was clear that the exclamation point is not part of the macro. And okay, no /R at the end there, so we come back. And so what it'll do is it's going to wait for the sound to be done before I can hit the button to mash through. We'll go to message 7, which is just this whole message at once. And then we will do wait button, where I hit A. Where this is the actual command that updates the Pokedex to the National Dex. Where again, we play the sound effect. We quickly display message 8, which uses the same macro to get my name and display National Dex in red. Wait for the sound to be done, move on. We're now on message 9. So same thing. So then hit A. Ah, okay. And this is when I get the Pokecheck right there. Adds it to the second screen. Okay, so it's given to us. We have our play sound. Then we move on to message A, which is the one we got here, displaying my name and Poketech in red. We got the wait button, boom. We got message B, where it's just the same thing again. You can see where we're getting down to the end of this, where I hit A. It gets us to the running shoes. We display message C. Got the running shoes there. Wait for the sound, hit A again. And now we get to Rowan saying goodbye. Now that you're all set, I wish you the best luck on your journey. We get to the end of that. We wait for me to hit A here, and then here for the rest of it. Then that closes. We run this, and then we release all, And now now I can walk around again. So I'm wondering how many of you already know what this does. Basically, we talked about before. I understand if you don't. I don't know yet with the recording how long this episode is. Right now, we are nearing hour 4 of recording this. So I understand if you don't remember. Anyway, this is the same thing we did before, where we set, well, the same variable to 1. We are now setting variable used on my triggers to 2. And since with our triggers, 2 is not equal to 0 or to 1, both triggers are now off in the game. I can walk down here and I can walk up here. I'm free to go. Aha. And I have my Pokedex. And I have my Pokemon party, where it has the updated name of Nanners. And now I'm actually ready to start my Pokemon adventure. And effectively, now that both these are off, as long as I never set this variable back to 0, my intro can never trigger again. That is now over and done, and my game has progressed. My player can begin to wander my world. But there is one more part of my script I need to show you, because we haven't gotten to script 4 yet. Basically, like I said in the very beginning, an overworld can do something when you hit A on it. Oh, also, just for clarity, I should delete this extra overworld that I don't need, and I should send this overworld back. 0 these out. 0, 0, back to the Shadow Realm where it's supposed to go. Okay, there we go. Then here, so right now Rowan doesn't do anything if you hit A on him. But I want you to be able to talk to Rowan himself, so I'm going to set this to 4. Where basically we come back to him, and now we can just walk around, talk to him from any angle. He will say, "Go away." Go away. Okay, that's pretty straightforward at this point. But I realized that if this was all that Rowan did, back when, let me load a state here, save a state, number 3. And then we will load a state, number 2. And we roll back time again. So now this is before I've hit A on the briefcase here. So right now I can walk away, but I can't walk north. But I can walk south. But if I hit A, on Rowan here, it would not make any sense for him to say, "Go away." Instead, they will say, "Go on, take anyone you like." And so what I have done is that when you hit A on Rowan, activate script 4, where they'll lock you in for the conversation, and we're going to check flag 8A2, which, if you remember, up here in script 3, the briefcase disappeared. So this is another example of me trying to reuse the same flag again, so that I don't use up another value in the ROM if I don't have to, so as I grow out my story, I don't run out of flags or variables. Let me show you kind of what I'm doing here. So I am checking if that flag is set as on or is cleared to be off. And then this one will do a usual jump if equal or different. For when checking a flag, equals means the flag is set and it's on, and different means that it's lowered and it's off. So I'm asking, is the flag lowered? And if it is, I'm going to jump to function 8. And 8, up here, just has me display message 0xe, wait for the button, close the message, and then release all, so I go back to playing the game again. And 0xe is go on, take anywhere you like. So right now, in my command, since I rolled back time, I am currently right after function 9. Rowan has just summoned the briefcase, and I am allowed to walk around. So at any point, if I hit A on Rowan, it will ask if the flag is set or lowered. Well, we're still before I run script 3 by hitting A on the briefcase. So right now that flag is lowered, as every flag is at the start of the game. So that's why we jumped to function 8, is because this is still lowered from the start of the game. Where Rowan says this. And then if I go through the whole thing again... Give me the monkey. So we just ran through script 3 by hitting A in the briefcase. And now we have set flag 0A2 as on. So now, at this point, because we've progressed in the story, if we were to hit A on Rowan and they check the flag, this would be, it is no longer lowered or different. So it doesn't do this jump. And later on, it displays message 0xF, which is go away. Which I can just show, which I'll just unlimit the frame rate. Oh no. Okay, yes. Oh. Okay. So my script is all done and I can walk wherever I want. And that's when I see go away. We are done. Okay. I saved that part for the end. I figured that's the test in a way. Like, it's a good sign if you follow how script 4 works. Because, like I said, I could technically just use a different flag. It doesn't have to be the same one that I use here. But it lines up so perfectly because I set that flag along with the overworld between the 2 times I can hit A on Rowan. And since I can do that, I can cleanly use that same flag here. If they didn't line up that way, I'd have to use a different flag. Or technically I could also use a variable for that one as well. But the reason why I did it is because it lined up so well for me. But okay. That's it. That's all of my commands. You have seen everything. Is there anything else I want to show? Oh, there's one little neat tidbit. So, okay. If you walk away. So I talked about what happens when you come back to a map. Like right now, Rowan is facing down. But if I leave, come here. Right now, he's unloaded. Because I don't see that part of the world. I load it back in when I come back. Now he's facing up. So when they reloaded the map, it defaulted back to what was their first orientation, which was up. So to make it look smooth, I could have at the end of my script 4 here added a movement that faced them back up. So there wouldn't be this weird disconnect with him looking down and looking up. But I wanted to do that as a visual example for you guys, so you can kind of see that's something you need to think about. Is what's the map going to look like when you come back compared to how you leave it when your script is done. And definitely was not me being too tired when I got to the end of my command to add more commands. I swear, this is just a great example. And okay, now we can save my ROM. But before we do that, you just want to make sure to save your script file. Okay, no errors. And just to be sure, save the text file. Yeah, looks good. And then also save your events. Perfect. So now we should be good. And I just use the big save button here. Put it on my desktop. I'll call it done. And save. And that's it. If I open that done ROM in DSPRE, it'll act just the same way as that ROM you've been watching in the upper left this whole time. The timelines have converged. Okay. And with that, I do believe we are all set. I hope I've explained everything okay, where you have a better understanding of how scripting works, where you could now look at the default scripts in an unedited ROM and reverse engineer them in the scripts that you want to use. Just be sure to play test things, because you'll never know the kind of issues you'll run into. Like for example, when I was learning, I originally gave you the Pokedex before giving the player the starter. But what I didn't know is that since that's impossible in the ROM, the game will actually crash if you try to open up the Pokedex without actually owning a starter. That's actually impossible. So when I released the player to walk up to the briefcase to pick a starter, there was a very, very small chance that the player would open up the Pokedex and crash the game and have to start over. So I had to change my script to have the starter given before the Pokedex. So you want to try to keep these things in mind. Actually, for example, I'm going to talk about that music issue that I mentioned back at this timestamp, where I kept playing at the intro. As I said, I didn't find that out until this morning. That was actually an issue. So I had to go and figure out, crap, how does this music work after the intro? And I wanted to walk you through how I found that out as an example of how do you dig through vanilla scripts. So the first thing I did was DSPRE. I went to the header editor, and now I knew on my own that the player's room is 415, where you're normally loaded into after the intro. And so now that I'm here looking at the player house, so now I'm here. I click open event, and now yeah, I can see the player room here. And these are all the things that are hidden for the intro of the game. I don't need the event. What I need is the script file. And what's nice is that DSPRE has a search function. And because the commands have such friendly names thanks to DSPRE's translations, I can just type in something like music. Oh, but then check to only current. Okay. And then I can see that in this current script file that I'm looking at, there's only 2 mentions of music. And this top one looks promising. Play default music. That should change it from playing whatever that song is to them playing the music of the map. So if I double click on that, it will then highlight that command right here. Okay. So what's happening here? So right now this is playing message 0. To get a visual idea of what's happening in the game, I can go back to the header, look at the text archive, and 00. That concludes our special program as Professor Rowan. So yeah, okay, this makes sense, because this is the little blurb that you get immediately after that splash screen where the TV's talking to you. So to play this one, play a sound effect, go through message 1, wait sound, and then play default music. So this matches up with the moment where the music stops in the actual game. So I have my command. But the thing is that we know that text box shows up right after the intro. There's no player action like hitting A on an overworld or stepping on a trigger that opens it. That means that it's related to a level script. I said before, are a little trickier to edit. So for right now, we can't use a level script on my map to stop the music after the intro. With the tips that I've shown today, you'd have to go and learn how to use ADASTRA's level script editor. And I can further confirm that's the case, because if I look at the events for that map, I can see that none of the scripts to activate point. Oh, wow, that doesn't do one. Point to script 3. So that means that it has to be a level script. Okay. So like I said, that option doesn't work for us at the moment. But a thought that I had, because I saw this ring of triggers. Oh, whoops. Up, down. That's right. You can't click the highlight. So these triggers. Aha. Well, that gave me a thought. Well, if we go into my map here, go back to the open events. So my player starts right around here. I'll play another temporary overworld sprite. So the player starts right here. We can put the same kind of ring of triggers around them, like that, and have those triggers activate a script that includes this play default music. So the moment the player takes a step after spawning after the intro, that will get the music to stop. Now, obviously, if they stood there, the music would just keep playing. This is not a fluid, nice solution like it would be to have the level script just stop it automatically. But I thought, at least for now, this would be a fun little mental experiment to throw at you. Now that you have survived this marathon of a video to get to this point, and I think that you'll get what I'm trying to say as the workaround here. This may make sense to you, and this should show that you are now ready to go out and start making your own scripts. Meaning you are now ready to head out into the world of scripting, and I believe in you. but I am tired. But as always, please leave a comment if you have any questions about anything in my video. However, I really can only answer things directly related to what I've shown here. Something such a broad topic, there's still a lot that I don't know. But I will do what I can, depending on what you ask. You can also come by the Discord as well. There's a lot more heads in there to help, including people who helped me get this far. And as always, like I said, all the tools that I've used in this video are going to be in the folder you can download from the description of this video. Where we got DSPRE in here. And we have all the downloadable files in here. My exported files, my text documents. So you should be as well stocked as I can possibly make you from my end. And if anything, if you want to come by the Discord just to show me what you've made, I'm curious what people can get from this one. I hope I've done this correctly. But for now, I'm gonna go take a nap. So, as much as I have ever said before, good night, everybody!